Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. It's a Monday afternoon, and no one is on the in the Zoom room with me currently. Let me just adjust this a little bit, but maybe somebody will come on here in just a moment. I won't be here long today. We have to get out of here pretty soon. The building I'm in is getting some work done, and I have to boot scoot. I was not aware of that. In any event, though, I am happy to be here. This is week 5 for our statistics and the social sciences course. Statistics, I got to tell you, each one in this class really has done a fantastic job. Probably, I would say, exceeded my expectations. Typically, I mean, this was the first class I took way back. I think I mentioned it in a Zoom room, or maybe a couple of them, or certainly in the um, messages that I've given. Stats, I was over it when I was younger. I didn't care much for math anymore, and people say it's not really math, it's statistics, but it's a branch of math, I think. Anyway, had a fantastic teacher teach me. His name was Joe, I think I mentioned, and he always said I'll remember his name, or not me, but the whole class would remember his name, a couple things about him. And he really was passionate about statistics. He was really good, and it was for the social science majors like myself. I was majoring in psychology, and so everything we did applied to studies of uh, social sciences, sociology, psychology, social psychology, those kinds of things. And he really did a good job with it. But anyway, I know it's challenging, and I know that I didn't say much about this earlier on. I didn't, want to give you any more apprehension than you already haven't. But it is a bit challenging. Nevertheless, you really have done a good job in applying yourself and clearly working very hard. I'm very impressed with your efforts. Everything isn't exactly right every time, but it's in the ballpark. And you're going to come away from this class getting the objectives that we want you to have. Remember, we never set out to make you a statistician, not from this class anyway. But you're going to be able to understand the conversations that are going on and understand the studies that have been completed. And really, when you go on into maybe graduate school, if you're looking to do those kind of things and to go to graduate school, and some of you certainly should, you want to take this with you and know what the peer-reviewed journals are talking about. So this will help you with that understanding. Is this a viable study? What are the um, problems with it? What are the limitations with it? Um, was the data uh, collected correctly? First of all, was it collected correctly? Second of all, was it analyzed correctly? And a class like this can really help you get the beginning understandings of that, just the beginning. So again, don't put too much pressure on yourself. I think maybe if I've helped in any way in this course, I hope that has been one of the things that has resonated with you, that you needn't worry too much and take a step back. There's as I mentioned last week, I'll mention it again. There are a number of resources that Central Christian College of Kansas has put in the course room for you. Great videos, Khan Academy, and some others, and along with the presentations. As I know this will be a short presentation, I think one of the things that I think is most important for you to take away this week, as well as the course, is the type of errors that we can have. And there's a very nice presentation in your in the Explore section of the course that has 3 presentations. We're going to talk about type 1 and type 2 errors. Type 1 error is also called an alpha error for those of you who really want to speak the speak and walk the walk and talk the talk. So this occurs when an experimenter thinks that he has a significant result, but it's really due to chance. Sometimes we'll put some things together and we think we've discovered. This is not uncommon, by the way, and even for people in the other sciences, what some call the hard sciences. They're really trying to find a cure for something, or something along those lines, and sometimes they'll run the numbers after they've run their experiment and gathered their data. They'll run the numbers and think they have something. but it's kind of like a false positive on a drug test, or even a false positive in a a health screening, if you will. Sometimes people get results back that say they have a disease when in fact it was just a false positive. There's reasons for that. For example, if someone is maybe does not have uh, high sugar or sugar diabetes, when they do the blood test for certain things like sugar, to test your sugar, you're supposed to fast um, for several hours. The best thing to do is to not eat anything past about 8 o'clock the night before, then go in the morning and have your blood drawn, and they'll run the test to see if your sugar's high, your sugar levels are high. Well, if you stop on the way to the doctor's office before they take your blood and have a jelly donut, well, your sugar very likely will be high, especially if that's the only thing you've eaten all day and it's early in the morning. So that would be a false positive. So you have to be careful of those. So the risk of a type 1 error is the same as the significance of a 0.05. So what you have to do, you got to look out for internal validity errors, such as different variables. That's one of the big ones. What they call in this slide, they call it confounding variables, and it's very common for social scientists, social science majors, especially in upper level classes or in grad school, to have too many other variables in their study that could impact the results. I'm trying to think of a real world experience that either I did because I've done them, or maybe some of my fellow learners along the line there. Perhaps with discipline for a child. You'll come back and you'll think you've got a perfect verbiage, if you will, to tell little Tommy, so that he will be more compliant with socially expected behaviors. Meanwhile, maybe there's something else in the room, another child that Bobby's trying to impress, or a toy that he got interested in. So he stopped, with the unwanted behaviors. He was distracted by a toy. If the unwanted behaviors was, for example, interrupting adult conversation, and you said, Tommy, you're not allowed to do that. If you continue, then we're going to have a talk. And some people would say that verbiage helps because it makes Tommy think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And then, but what they may not realize is that maybe another child came into the room, or perhaps he was discovered some toys along the way. So that would be, if you follow that line, like I said, I know exactly what to say to children to make them comply with my request. Well, probably not. There's too many other mitigating factors, or what we call confounding variables. So you have to use very stringent controls, if you will. Another example is the marshmallow experiment, where kids are given a marshmallow, and we've talked about this before, and the adult says, listen, here's your marshmallow, you can go ahead and eat it now, but if you wait, I have to go somewhere. If you wait until I come back and you don't eat that marshmallow, then I will give you another one so that you'll have two. So, in those experiments, yeah, it's pretty much one child in the room with a marshmallow on a plate or a napkin or whatever have you, sitting there without anything else to do. So if you were to introduce some electronic games or other children who may influence the child one way or the other, now you've got confounding variables. So, and for those of you who may not quite remember, maybe didn't hear the discussion of the marshmallow experiment, it was done to help determine the emotional intelligence level of children. If they were able to delay their gratification in the with the hope of getting double what they had, those kids were kind of shown or believed to have a higher level of emotional intelligence, and it lend itself to them being more successful in academics and friendships and marriage and in their career, because they followed these kids for many years. All right, so that's your alpha 1 area. So this is This is kind of bad. This is not a very good thing. We want to stay away from type 1 errors. Now the type 2 error, the first one is alpha, the second one is beta. This occurs when a researcher fails to find a significant result when in fact there was something significant going on. Okay, it's kind of like a false positive. The other one was kind of like a false, well, let's see. How do we call that one? Make sure. Okay, I'm not sure why well, I guess this is kind of, I'm not sure, I'm not crazy about how they worded these slides. Nonetheless, I think you'll understand it. This is also like a false positive. Okay, must be calculated with a test of statistical power. Given the sample size, how big would an effect have to be in order to detect it? So you got to be careful of your sample size, okay? So if the sample size is too small, you might think that you're on to something, it could just be different. It could be that you are actually think you're not onto something, pardon me, when actually you are. So make sure you have a big enough sample size and use precise measures and precise replication, because we haven't really talked about it too much. But one way we validate our research is to make the test or the study replicable, so that someone else can come along and repeat it and should get the same or very similar results. So type 1 and type 2 errors, they kind of trade off with one another. Decreasing the chance of a type 1 error may increase the chance of a type 2 error. I'm just reading the slide right now so you can read it too. A type 1 error is more egregious. In other words, when you think you have discovered something, like a behavioral intervention for a child, and you really haven't, and this has happened quite often, even in professional literature, it turns out that's a problem if you think you've discovered a solution and you really haven't. Now the type 2 error, in a way, like, okay, because we want to err on the side of caution anyway as scientists. So you say, well, we can't really say, because there's no scientific proof. There's only sort of scientific probabilities. So if you're like, well, you think you didn't find something, but there's actually something there, because someone else is going to come along and do a study, and they're going to find out. They're eventually going to find that you actually did discover something. So I did want to talk about that. The type 1 error, I love this analogy here, and it's been used before. Type 1 errors entail shouting eureka when you really haven't found anything. And we've all, especially as professors, dealt with students who they get up like and sort of shout, yeah, I found something, when in fact their study wasn't nearly stringent enough to determine that. That's all too common. So you'll see that happen to your classmates as you go along, or maybe even yourself. But you've been forewarned now to be very hesitant to stand up and say, I've got something, I really discovered something here. You want to just kind of be quiet and low key, run the experiment again and again and again, increase the sample size, of course, and then have other people take a look at what you're doing, your methods, as well as your data and your data analysis, and let them also replicate the test or the experiment, if you will. So anyway, that's all I'm going to have for today. I got to get out of here pretty soon, and I did want to just touch base with you. Remember, I said it last week, and I think it resonated with many of you. The videos are there for you. The PowerPoint presentations are there for you. The textbook, as far as statistics textbooks go, I like the textbook. You can kind of follow along, especially as we go through our exercises. So that's all I'm going to have for you. Let's see, we're going to do the Bible verse. I can't remember which ones I've done, and I got some favorites. I'm not sure if I used this one or not. We're going to go with Micah 6:8. I might have used that before, but that's okay too. It's one of my favorites. I love it so much, and I talked about it in church this week. So Micah 6:8 is our Bible scripture that you can use to get your points for the course. Again, you're doing very well. We've only got 2 weeks to go. That's only like 30% of the class left. Come a long way, just 30% more to go. Don't give up now. Grades aren't looking too bad for most of you. And I'm here if you need me. Of course, you know how to reach out to me. And do take advantage of the presentations and the videos in your course room. Someone has worked very hard to ferret those out, and they are very good and very clearly very good and very helpful because you are moving along quite nicely. That's all I got for now. We got our scripture, and I will talk to you soon.